All right. Good evening, everybody. As you see, we have two guests, very special for our fascinating people that we always like to speak with on Tuesday. We have with us my friend, Mr. Simcha Frank, and somebody else is with you, but I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Nasan Dubovic.
Nasan Libovic, and they are
Dubovic. Dubovic.
Dubovic. Okay.
Yes.
And they are from Hatzala, one of the very important and near and dear to my personal life story, which I'll share through the conversation from Hatzala here in Chicago. So first of all, men, thank you very much. And I'm particularly happy that, thank God, this means you're not on a call, so everybody is safe and healthy. And we really appreciate you spending some time to share with us the story about Hatzala. So let's jump right in and start with the beginning. What is Hatzala? What is the word Hatzala? What is the story of Hatzala? Give us a little bit maybe of the history of Hatzala in general and in Chicago specifically, please.
Hi, Rabbi. It's a pleasure to be with you here, and Mr. Mel, who he mentioned his daughter Anna. She's a great ER nurse in Skokie.
Beautiful. There you go. She just
Mazel
had a baby.
Tov, Mazel Tov, Mel, on your grandchild.
Beautiful. Mazel Tov.
Hatzala started in the East Coast in the late 1960s by a gentleman by the name of Rabbi Herschel Weber, and it slowly started to creep up in all the Jewish communities around the world. It really started because most of our people do not accept mediocrity. We always want to be served before we need to be served. We always want help before we needed help. So we always like the top-notch service, as they say. Hatzala started in Chicago in 2009. The city runs an excellent EMS system in Skokie, Lincolnwood, and Evanston, but a group of people got together in 2009, and we started Hatzala saying we could do better for our community, we could do better for our schools, we could do better for our shuls, we should train people here in Chicago as first responders. And in 2009 it started. We started fundraising in 2010. We don't take any money from the community, from the government. We self-fund from the community. And we started small, as now transport EMS providers. People call us, we come. And then we got ambulances, and now we're full-fledged with BLS and ALS, if anybody knows medical stuff. We're full-fledged private, non-for-profit, volunteer ambulance service here in our area.
Okay, and tell us, how did you guys specifically get involved? What's your connection to it particularly? How did it become a passion of yours?
Well, my involvement was in 2009 when the conversation started. One of the Rabbanim in the community said, listen, some people want to start Hatzala, and why don't you try to get involved? You're a person involved in the community. Why don't you see if you could lend your talents? And at that point, I was one of these fat, out of shape individuals, and I said, I wouldn't mind somebody next to me knowing what to do if, God forbid, I needed help.
Okay. And Reb Nassan, how did you get involved?
I work at Telz Yeshiva. I've been there for over 30 years. And I'm the building manager, and I also take care of any needs that the boys, the Yeshiva Bachur, need. And included in that was trips to the ER, doctor visits, kind of playing doctor a little bit if somebody got hurt. So when Hatzala got started and the word was going around that Hatzala was starting in Chicago, the Rabbeim there said, it would be a great idea if you got EMT training. This way, you'll be part of this network. You'll be able to be on the spot if something goes wrong, God forbid. I even remember one of the Rosh Hashivas who was in his 80s at the time said, we're all getting older. We might need you. It's a good thing to do. And I guess
you've been involved since the beginning, since 2000.
Yes, I was in the first class. I wasn't in a leadership position then, as I am now, but I was in the first class of responders that was trained back in 2011.
So back in 2011, how many volunteers and staff and responders did you have, and how many do you have today, 12, 13 years later?
We started with two classes, one of 25 and one of 15. Out of those two classes, only 30 ended up joining. Mm-hmm. And now we're twice that size.
Twice that size. Wow, fantastic. And can you give us a rough number of how many calls Hatzala responds to on an average month?
We average between 120 to 140 calls a month.
100, so 3 or 4 calls a day.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, but as you know, EMS, so some days we get nothing and some days we get 10. So there's no rhyme or reason to that.
I hear you. Now, well, look, I can tell my personal story. Everybody here knows, not a secret, that on Shmini Atzeres in 2021. I was in shul getting ready to jump around and dance with the Torahs, and I started to feel kind of sick and weak and so on. And fortunately, a friend of my daughter's who happens to be a nurse said, don't fool around, call Hatzala. I said, what's Hatzala? I don't need Hatzala. I'm fine. Next thing I know, Reb Simcha and the gang, and I'm in the ambulance and off to the hospital, and they said, you're having a heart attack. I said, I'm not having a heart attack. Hit that thing on the side a couple of times and send me back to shul. So I know about Hatzala itself and the great work they do. Guys, we lost your video. If you can come back, I hope you can still hear us. Have you had?
We can hear you.
Here we
Okay,
go.
there we go. Have you had any difficulty dealing with local hospitals or EMS or the police? Did they give you a hard time? Did they welcome your service? Is there any kind of friction there?
So as you know, in anything that's new in any community, any city, anytime there's something new, there's always the naysayers. There's always the people say, why do we need it? Spend your money wiser. So when Hatzala started, Rabbi Epstein, we had a meeting at the Wi-Fi, and almost every rabbi, I don't recall if you were there, you might have been there, because I remember Rabbi Hertz was there, Rabbi Moskowitz was there, I'm almost positive you were there, or you might have not been there, maybe in 2009 you were kind of hiding, but 50 Rabbanim at the Wi-Fi to talk about Hatzala, because at the end of the day, our Hatzala does not work without the leadership of the rabbis in the community. We have strict medical guidelines. We also follow halacha guidelines. So we had a meeting, and at that meeting, we brought some city officials. And the city official was very against Hatzala. And we brought them there because we didn't want the rabbis to only have positive. We wanted the rabbis to have both sides. You know, we want them to have the pros and the cons, and let us make an educated decision. And this gentleman who sat there in front of all the rabbis said, I think Hatzala is a great thing, but you're spending $300,000-$400,000 to get this off the ground. Then with a budget of $300,000-$400,000 a year, you're really going to only save maybe 2 or 3 lives a year. And you know, spend the money wiser other places. You might affect other people, but you're only going to save that rabbi. You're a rabbi. You hear that? What do you say?
Every life is a whole world.
Every life is a world. What if that life is your father, your mother, your sister, your daughter, your child? Every rabbi looked at each other and says, I know you came here to be against it. You just sold us this product.
We're for it for the reason you're against it. So you
Exactly.
mentioned about the rabbis and so on. What are some halachic guidelines that you could share with the people here and will watch the recording? Somebody starts feeling sick and so on. I mean, when should they call Hatzala? Obviously, we're not asking you to diagnose somebody over the Zoom, but can you give us, what are some of the halachic guidelines that people should be aware of when it comes to calling Hatzala, both, I guess, during the weekdays and certainly on Shabbos and Yom Tov?
That's a very tricky question, and as Nassim will tell you, we cannot tell you halachically what to do and when to do. I am 2 degrees shy of my rabbinical degree. There's many rabbis,
but I could tell you who to pay off.
but we can tell you if there's a question, we always say call. The line we always use, I'd rather you call 99 times for nothing than the one time that you didn't call and we didn't come. The truth is, if it's something that you feel that you need to go to the hospital, that you feel that this is affecting your life, then you should call. Do you get a cut on Shabbos? Do you call or not to call? I'm not going to tell you that answer. Everybody has to be comfortable with their decisions. And I think with the rabbinical guidance. I know there's a couple of rabbis in the community recently have given shiurim on this. And us as healthcare providers, we can't tell you what to do. The emergency room nurses will tell you what to do because they'll tell you how you're overwhelming the ER if you're coming for nothing. But we cannot tell you of what to do or when to do it. We know we have our guidances. We have strict halacha guidances. We have shiurim, once a month. We have our medical continuing educations, and we always have Rabbanim come and give us some guidance at those shiurim.
And again, it's just sharing my own story that Baruch Hashem, we did call on Yom Tov for my own. Who does Hatzala service? Is it only Jews? Is there geographic limitations? Like, what's the process if somebody calls? Is there any kind of vetting? Can you give us some parameters about that to help us understand that?
Sure.
That
so
side?
we're an emergency medical service. So we're a little bit different than the private ambulance. A private ambulance, for example, they can go on a schedule. So private ambulances will do a lot of transports, let's say from a nursing home to hospital or to doctor's office, things like that. We're not in that classification. We're an emergency service. The state tells us, according to state law, we have to be able to get to a patient within 6 minutes of being called. So we have to make a hard border of the areas that we can service by figuring out where we have people during the day and during the night. And that border doesn't change because we can't, make that at 6 p.m. all of a sudden it turns over. But we based on our estimates and our best understanding of how the city's laid out and traffic and things like that, that's where we draw our lines. We have had times where we've gone beyond those borders, but it's not an emergency response. And we typically we don't do transports out of nursing homes. That would step on the private ambulance contracts that they have. We have partnered with Hatzala Air. I don't know if anybody's heard of Hatzala Air. We partner with Hatzala Air at times to pick up patients from the airport when they've come in on medical flights. But generally, we service our areas when we have it pretty well defined in our website where our borders are. If someone calls from outside those borders, either we will tell them we'll call 911 for you, because it's really nice to have a bunch of fellow, landsman show up at your door. But if you're in Highland Park and it's a long ways to get to you, it's not going to work.
Sorry, Mel.
And also, especially if you're having chest pain, you have difficulty breathing. Those are things that really can't wait. So we're not going to put anybody in danger and say, we have to jump on this call. What we're going to do is we're going to make sure that you have the best outcome possible.
Gotcha. So you mentioned the website. What is that website? And what if somebody wants to get involved? Are you still taking volunteers? Does the person already have to have a medical degree? If somebody's listening or sees the recording, they say, yeah, I want to participate. Is there non-medical ways that they can participate, support systems? I mean, besides obviously donating money, which is always good. So if you can give us the website and give us a little sense of how can people get involved?
So I just want to double up what Nelson said, is because you asked the geographic area, just because I know people are going to watch this, is really Gulf Road to Bryn Mawr, Western to Crawford. That's
Okay.
the kind of the borderline. There's some carve
Oh,
outs.
Evanston is in there a little bit.
Some of Evanston is in there, Skokie, Lincolnwood, West Rogers Park, Albany Park,
Peterson Park.
and Peterson Park. To get involved, there's many different ways to get involved. And there's many, we always joke, there's a lot of moving parts in an organization, as you know. There's responders, there's dispatchers, there's people that service our ambulances every night. There's people that make sure that all our equipment is ordered. We make sure we need donors. We need people that are advocates of ours. So every part of that has to work in the same direction. So even though somebody is, let's say, a service member who cleans ambulance, he's just as important as a paramedic.
Of course.
Because without the equipment, we can't treat you. So there's many different ways. The website is hatzalachicago.org, HATZALAH, Chicago. And on that webpage, there's a place that says get involved, volunteer, and then you can get involved in many different ways, and you fill out an application. So to be a responder, for example, we look for people that have availability during the day. Most of the times it's self-employed people or people like this gentleman who is institution allows them to leave. I am technically middle day, I can't leave, so I do more during the night.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody has to be able to carry their weight at different times.
So hatzalachicago.org, and there's information there if somebody wants to participate either as an EMT or, like you say, a dispatcher or a mechanic, or of course, people who want to donate and participate in this life-saving activity. Is there one quick story? Obviously, we don't want you to reveal anybody's private information, but is there any story that you could share with us generically that highlights it? And then we'll open up if anybody, I see Batsheva's got a quick question, and then we'll let these fine, wonderful heroes.
I've got two stories, Rabbi. Typically, we don't tell stories, but I do remember that Simple Story night, the one you referenced. And I do remember you look at me and you said to me, hold on, do I have a HIPAA release?
You have a HIPAA release from me.
Mel, you're the attorney. Can I release?
Oh, Mel, that's you. Mel's Mel's my attorney. Give him the thumbs up, Mel. He's
I
my
remember
attorney.
you said a very key word when I came into the house. You said this was bothering me since this morning. And you were talking about when to call Hatzala. This morning was when to call Hatzala.
Yeah, now you tell me.
But we do, because we're such a close-knit community, we're a very close-knit community. If I told you a story now, somebody on this phone could know the story based on a story. So we are bound by the strictest confidentiality. When somebody does
Absolutely.
Hatzala, they literally sign a confidentiality agreement. It's almost like an NDA. Because it could be Mel, it could be anybody on this phone, Bob Wells, anybody on this phone that they can know the story. So I really can't disclose, but I will
Okay,
tell you
absolutely.
this. When somebody calls Hatzala, and when we show up in the door, the biggest satisfaction we get as Hatzala members, you could literally see the blood pressure go down in the room when we walk in. Even though I'll be honest, sometimes I'm like, I have no clue what's going on. And I'm just trying to gather. They're like, all of a sudden the fixer man is here and now the problem is solved. And it's not even being close to solved, but they realize that these people are coming in to help them, to be there for them. They're their friends, their neighbors, their accountant, their HVAC guy. They are here just for them. They left their job, they left their wife, they left their shul, they left their dinner to be there for them. And I'm telling you, I hear it all the time from people, and they say, we were so tense, and all of a sudden the people came in, and it wasn't for our good looks, and they felt that the competent people came in to help them at the time of need.
Beautiful, beautiful. I see Batsheva, you want to jump in with a quick question, and
No,
anybody else, we want to take
yeah,
up the
sure.
gentleman's
I'm a
time and let them get
caregiver.
back to important things.
I understand. I am a caregiver, and several times I've seen this, that I do call Hatzala and 911. By the time the firemen come, you've already gotten them ready and they can go out to the hospital. I mean, literally, it was in Winston Towers, and there was a Hatzala man just down the floor from them. I mean, you could be your neighbor, so definitely, I mean, if it's okay with you, I call both. And I personally have called twice for myself when I had to. It was an emergency for myself. And so you're heroes.
The heroes, absolutely.
What I want to say is that we're not in any kind of competition with the fire department. Simcha mentioned earlier, the EMS system in Chicago happens to be tremendous. We've done countless hours of training with the paramedics of the Chicago Fire Department, Skokie, Lincolnwood, Evanston. I've never seen, I spent hours and hours at fire stations. I never saw them saying, oh, the alarm went off, I'm gonna go eat a sandwich first and then go to the patient. That's not what's going on here. The thing is that we live in a large city, there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of construction, and there are limited resources to every city, every town. We are adding resources in a very small confined area. That's how we are able to get to places like you mentioned. You know, we could have somebody down the block. I'll tell you a quick story. Okay, I was called last year. I was called to do a class in one of the high schools, one of the girls' high schools, and I was giving a little bit of a history of Hatzala in general, and then I was talking about certain emergencies. And all of a sudden my radio goes off, and I said, okay, I'm gonna let you hear, I'm not gonna let you hear the address, but I'm gonna let you hear how the call flows. And the call was, any units available in this high school.
Where you were?
I was upstairs, I was down at the patient's side in 20 seconds.
Unbelievable.
And I said, I turned the class over to the teacher. I said, you know what, this is why it works. Literally on scene in the building. Wow. So that's how these things work. We have excellent working relationship with the fire department. We call on them when we need. So, for example, if there's a car crash, we don't have the tools to deal with a car crash. So we're partnering then with the police department and the fire department. We've had times when we had to make a forced entry into a residence. And again, we'll call the police, we'll call the fire department, and they come to us as quickly as possible. So that's it. There is a partnership. But what we do is we kind of relieve some pressure from the local EMS in our limited area.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for what you do for the community. Thank you for what you did for me personally. And Hashem should bless you and keep you safe and the community safe. I really, really appreciate your time tonight. And really thank you. Thank you for the entire staff of all of Hatzala. And again, hatzalachicago.org. And if people want to get involved, they want to participate financially, they want to participate personally, it's time and money and effort very, very well spent. And as we said, if you save one life, it's like saving the world entire. So thank you. Thank you to all of you and to all of your staff and everybody who does so much for so many. We really, really appreciate it. Okay, good night, everybody.
And I want to thank you, and I'm glad that you're sitting there on the other side of the Zoom. You look great.
Thank you. I'm being a good boy. I take my medicine and I eat my oatmeal. Good night. Good night. We'll see everybody
Thank you.
tomorrow night.
Thank you for
Good
having
night.
us.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.